Dictionaries in Python are incredibly important. And in other languages, a dictionary is often called an object. So like in JavaScript or JSON, a dictionary is an object. And if you're familiar with those already, you'll be familiar with how it works in Python, because they're very, very similar. But for the most part, you can really think of a dictionary like a variable with many variables inside of it. And so instead of saying Caleb name is equal to Caleb, and then Caleb age is equal to 30, and Caleb cat is equal to 2, and Caleb fave food is equal to taco. Instead of writing all of that, we can use this thing called a dictionary and put this all inside of one variable called Caleb. Now, of course, this doesn't have to revolve around me. It's just easy for me to make that example. But it could be around literally anything. And at this point in time, we're starting to actually sort of clump data together. So all of this has to do with me. So before we get started, let's go ahead and take a look at some syntax. So I got a variable here, and then I have this thing called a key, and this other thing called a value. And I could have another key here, colon, and then another value here. And so this key should always be a string, ideally something that's easily accessible. I like to stick with the idea that your key should always be named like your variables. So if we run this and we check out person, we have key value, key2, value 2, and type of person is going to be a dict, which is short for the word dictionary. Now, the nice thing about this is if we wanted to get just a particular key, we could simply print out person, and then just like how we used indexes with a list or a tuple or a string, this would be our new index, but instead of using a number, we use the name. So let's go ahead and print person, and then just like an index, but instead of a number, we use a string, and a string always has those quotations or apostrophes around it. Now, that doesn't exist because obviously there's no name in here, or no key called name, but if we change this to key, we're gonna see value, key 2, value 2. So let's go ahead and work with a real example. So let's say there's a course, and this course has a name. And this course is Python for everybody. Let's say this course also has students. How many students are there? I don't know, 100,000 students, something like that. And in this course, how many lessons are there? Or let's not use an int, let's use a float. How long is this course? I actually have no idea at this point in time. So let's put length, and the length of this course is going to be, I don't know, 8.75. We'll assume that's hours. Now, if we wanted to, we could actually get really, really interesting with this. We could say lessons is now a list, and we could list off all the lesson names. So we could have strings, lists, dictionaries, if statements. We haven't got there yet, but we will. All sorts of stuff. We could have all that kind of data in there as well. And so really any sort of data type can be your value, and your key should always just be something that's easy to relate to, something that's easy to remember, like a variable name. So let's go ahead and run this. And we'll see that course is a bunch of information in here. And let's run, just for fun, type on course. It's a dictionary, as expected, but what if we wanted the type of lessons? We could do type course lessons. And remember, instead of using 0 like we would do for a string or a list or a tuple, we simply put in the string. And this lessons here matches this one here. And this, when I hit Shift Enter, is going to say it is a list, just like that. Now, why is this important? Well, because now we have all this information grouped together in one variable. So this no longer has to look like this. So it doesn't say course underscore name is equal to Python for everybody. Course underscore students is equal to 100,000. Course underscore length is equal to 8.75. Course underscore lessons is equal to a list of strings, lists, dictionaries, and if statements. We just have one variable to rule them all, which is really, really, really nice. And once again, just as an example, if you wanted to get any value in there, you could with course name. This is your variable name, and this is the key, and that key is one of these, name students, length, or lessons. Sure enough, there it is. But what if we wanted to add something more to this? We know with a list we can use list.append, but that's not going to work here because it's not a list. We want to instead say course. We just simply give it a new key right off the bat. Let's give this a subject, and this is going to be programming. Hit enter, and let's take a look at what it does. We have name, student, length, lessons, and now we have the subject. It's a string of programming. And if we wanted to delete anything, this is actually pretty interesting as well, we could simply type the keyword del. You can see that it's syntax highlighted here as del. We give it course. Let's get rid of length, but let's make sure we spell length correctly. And then course. And before we had length 8.75, we deleted course length, and now it's not in here at all. Now let's say you just wanted to get all of the keys in here. We could put a variable in here called keys and do course.keys. This is a method on the course object. And let's take a look at what keys are. And it's a dictionary of keys. But if you look inside of this, that looks a lot like a list, doesn't it? And what if you wanted all of the values? You could do values is equal to course dot, and let's just hit tab and see what we have here. Clear copy from keys get. Actually, we'll talk about get in a second. I'm glad that one came up. Pop, but let's go ahead and actually just get values. And let's see what values are. And the values, again, is a dictionary of values, but look at the innings of this, the inside. We have one item here, Python for everybody, 100,000. The next one is a list inside of a list. And then our last item here is a string called programming. Now, just for fun, let's do a little more real life example here. So let's say I'm going to ask the user if they want information from this course. They need to type in the name, students, lessons, or subject. So let's say, what info do you want is equal to, and that's a terrible variable name, very verbose, a little long though, and say, I don't know, enter name, students, lessons, or subject. And then that's going to be stored in this variable. And what we can do now is say the data or the value, let's call it data, is equal to course get, and then whatever this is. And this is either going to be name, students, lessons, or subject. And then let's print that out. Print data. Enter name, students, lessons, or subject. Let's type in students. Gives us 100,000. Let's rerun this. Let's do subject. Programming. So all this is doing is saying, hey, this variable is essentially subject. That is actually exactly what it is. It's a string as well. So data course.get subject is going to go, okay, well, you've got a dictionary here called course. Get the key called subject, and whatever that value is, put it into your variable. So now we're getting super Pythonic here. We're getting really into the nitty-gritty of a programming language. Now, let's see what happens when that key does not exist. When you have a malicious user who simply does not follow the rules, which is like 90% of the internet. So when someone says enter name, students, lessons, or subject, and I go, cats and tacos. Oh, look at that. It came up with none. And that's because when you use get and it doesn't find the key that you're looking for, its default, also its second parameter, is none. We could also set the default parameter here to be this wasn't found. And let's rerun this cell. Anything that isn't a real key. So this is going to basically error, quote unquote, but it's actually going to say, hey, this key does not exist as name, students, lessons, or subject. And it's going to return this wasn't found. So let's hit enter. This is what I entered, and this is what came back. Now, a little bit later, we're going to look at looping over a dictionary. I think we might as well bring it up now. We don't really know about loops, but you know what? I like to pre-expose my students to some more advanced stuff. And then once we get to it in a few lessons, you'll be like, oh, this is somewhat familiar. So we can actually do this quite easily in a for loop. For item, comma, no, let's not do item, key, value, in course.items. And what this is going to do is basically turn this into a list. So we've got a name and a value, or a key and a value. Key, value, name, Python for everyone. Key, value, students, 100,000. Key, value, lessons, list of lessons. And we can print key with a fat arrow, just so we know that this is a little bit custom here. Value, let's run that. Name, students is 100,000. Lessons is a list, and subject is programming. So for this last part, this particular one here, you do not need to know this, but I thought it would be fun to sort of show you how we can do it, because that's going to be a question that a lot of people are asking. I know when I was learning Python, that was one of my questions about dictionaries as well. So as a quick summary, dictionaries prevent this. So instead of having 4 variables, you have 1 variable. It's still 4 lines of code or more, but instead of Caleb underscore name, Caleb underscore age, Caleb underscore cats, Caleb underscore favorite food, you could just have 1 variable called Caleb. The type of a dictionary is DICT. If you want to print out a particular value, you just have to print out the dictionary name, so that variable name, and then the key, and this one matches right here. Value 2 matches down here, value 2. This is a good example of a bigger dictionary, whereas a string, an int, a float, and a list. We said there was still a dictionary, but if we wanted to get just the lessons, well, that was originally a list, and when we run type on it, it's a list. So we know that we can have dictionaries with different data types inside of it. We added a new item to our dictionary by simply saying the variable name and then the key name is equal to the value. And that simply adds it in here for us, and that did it right there. We deleted an item out of our dictionary with the del keyword, and that got rid of length for us. 8.75 no longer shows up if you look down here. You can get a list of all the keys by running your dictionary.keys. You can get a list of all the values by running your dictionary.values, and you can get a specific item out of your dictionary by running the .get method with, let's say we wanted to get the name, but if for whatever reason this was deleted or this was never set, it can return a default, and that default is always none. And last but not least, we did some weird thing that we probably don't fully understand yet, but is still kind of cool. We looped through every key and value pair together in a for loop and printed them out. Now you don't need to remember all of this right now. Again, this comes with a lot more experience, and that experience is built over time. So don't feel like you need to know this before continuing on. But what I would like you to do is create your own dictionary, add a new item to it, delete an old item to it, and then just print out your slightly changed dictionary. Once you're done that, let's head on over to that next lesson. We'll learn about another data type.